Tell me why big business and big government have used the pandemic as an opportunity to crush small business.
This is really one of the most underreported stories of the last year and a half. And certainly I looked at this through the lens of the US, but we know that some of the happenings that happened here also happened around the world. We had a government who shut down portions of the economy, not based on data or science, but based on political clout and connections. And as you can imagine, the small businesses are not the ones with the political clout and connections, and they were the ones that bore the brunt of the lockdown from the beginning and then through the duration of really the past year and a half. And what this enabled was the most historic transfer of wealth that we have ever seen from Main Street to Wall Street on two levels, both from the direct shutting down of competitors of big business, as well as what central banks, both here in the US and around the world, did to put in money that really benefited the big companies and those who had access to capital. So a tremendous economic moment, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to document it and now to share it with you.
Well, small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, make up a really big part of the British economy. They make up a big part of the US economy too. And you'll know as well as I do, Carol, and you've written about this in your brilliant books, that it's within small businesses that you'll find the innovation and so much of the economic growth and all of the new ideas. So why is the government not doing more to protect what you call Main Street, these smaller businesses?
So I sort of leave it as a choose your own adventure, but I will offer up this idea that there is a great consolidation going on. Here in the US before COVID, small businesses were more than 30 million entities, and they accounted for about half the GDP and about half the jobs. The other half of the economy is concentrated in about 20,000 big businesses. So if you are a government official who is seeking lobbying dollars or campaign contributions or just a way to consolidate power, is it easier for you to get into bed, so to speak, with 20,000 big businesses or with 30 million very independent businesses that are across every geography and every industry and whatnot? It's certainly sort of a ease of use case. And so what we're seeing, particularly here in the US, is that the government is growing in power and purview. They're spending more, and they're creating this sort of unholy triumvirate of big business, big special interests, and big government. And that is crowding out the small business and the opportunity for economic freedom. And as you mentioned, innovation and things that make all of our life better, better products, more choice, competition.
So this is either a conscious or an unconscious conspiracy between the government and big business.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that, you could argue it's, nefarious, or you could argue that they are incompetent, or you could just argue that the government feels like they need to do something and the small businesses are inconvenient. But it doesn't really matter what the intention is. We know that the outcomes end up the same. And every time here in America, they say we're going to do something to help small business or, help the little guy, it never is the case. And that's why we have these big businesses that are always lobbying for more regulation, because we know that regulation is anti-competitive. It makes it more difficult for small businesses to compete. I mean, we saw this after the Great Recession financial crisis. The Dodd-Frank regulation here in the United States that was meant to rein in the big banks actually killed small business banks, and it killed small business lending. So instead of reining them in, it gave them free rein.
So, Carol, if we look at the winners of this pandemic, we can think about Facebook and Google and Apple and Amazon and, yes, Pfizer. Is there a risk that eventually these huge corporations will simply run America?
I think there's a huge risk. And to just wrap some numbers around what you're talking about, during 2020, 7 technology companies gained $3.4 trillion in market value, while hundreds of thousands of small businesses were murdered and millions more struggled to survive. And unfortunately, that's the landscape that we're starting to see. Right now, there's a huge labor supply and demand imbalance here in the US. And it turns out that Amazon is going and hiring all the workers. And of course, they have the access to capital that the small mom and pops don't have. So it's not only that we're going to have fewer choices with this consolidation, but again, it takes those opportunities away from people who want to start a small business, pursue their passion, pursue their freedom, create innovations, to have that route. And certainly that's not a benefit, and it stands in direct opposition to the capitalism and the American dream that America is supposed to stand for.
Now, Carol, finally, how much of this is political? How much of it is about a left-wing president in Joe Biden letting this happen, asleep at the wheel, if you like, sleepy Joe Biden? Could it be that a strong Republican president could shake things up and re-democratize and rebalance the American economy? Is it about politics? Can anyone stop this happening, Carol?
So I think it is a systemic problem here in the U.S. Certainly the Democrats tend to be worse and accelerate the problem. But you have to remember that a lot of these policies came down under President Trump's purview. His administration came up with 15 days to slow the spread. And while Congress was dominated by the Democrats and, helped fuel the spending, it really is sort of a 1-2 punch here. Both parties, the main parties in America, own our, huge trillions of dollars in national debt. And so anytime a Republican comes into the fold, they never really take the opportunity to peel back the government, make it smaller, and to return us to capitalism. So while Democrats certainly accelerate the problem a lot of the time, the Republicans never sort of counter that. And I think here in the U.S., the answer is to sort of break up that duopoly. If you talk about being anti-competitive, having only a 2-party system doesn't give Americans a choice. And certainly neither party right now, even though the lip service on the right is that they stand for economic freedom and fiscal conservatism, unfortunately, we just haven't seen that.
And clearly, if this is a problem for America, which your book points out it is in excruciating and rather troubling detail, well, a problem for America now will certainly be a problem for countries like the UK in the near future.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.